I finally managed to finish a vented dipstick, installed it, gave it a test, and it didn't work, but not for the reasons you're guessing. You win some and you lose some. How's it going, everybody? My name is Ron Chenal, and here on this channel I tackle projects of all sizes related to the bikes I ride, and I give you as much information as I can about those projects and try to share what I learn along the way as well. If you saw my previous video, which I'll link to here, I implemented an external breather modification for my Arlen Ness Monster Sucker intake. And that project worked extremely well. Although I did run into a hiccup along the way, in the end, I sorted it all out and it's working very well up to this point. I'm very happy with how that project worked out. However, that is not the case with the vented dipstick project. I thought I had a solution that worked really well, and after a little bit of testing, I realized that there were some issues that had nothing to do with the dipstick itself. And so that's what I want to tell you about today. But let me also point out that I'm going to be posting a follow-up video in the near future with a very interesting solution. I've been talking with a company about their solution for this problem, and it's not fueling with the fueling vented dipstick. This is a different solution, and I'm pretty excited about the prospects of this, and I expect to have that product in hand in the next couple of weeks or so. So be sure to stay tuned for that future video. If you haven't yet subscribed, please do. Hit the notification bell and enable all notifications. That way you'll be alerted whenever I do post those future videos. So before I dive into the project, take just a second to hit pause and drop in a comment and let me know what you think the issue is that I couldn't get resolved with this project. And as I mentioned, I ran into a couple of issues, so I'm going to tell you all the parts that I used for this project and what worked and what didn't work, and I'll have a link to those parts in the description if you want to try it yourself. But as I'm telling you, there's an issue here that you'll see more about as we get further into the video. And if you don't want to see the details on what I put together for this project, you can check the video description. There will be links there that'll let you jump ahead to the outcome of the project and what's going on at this point. So why even bother with a vented dipstick? Well, the issue is that there's a lot of pressure changes inside that crankcase as the engine runs. And if you vent the crankcase, you eliminate the vacuum and the excess pressure, and you allow everything to breathe a little bit easier. And it also should help reduce the amount of blow-by that gets past those pistons. In my Arlen Ness breather mod video, I showed you just how much gunk and residue was being collected around those breather bolts and ultimately blown back into the throttle body. Since I already tackled the top half of the engine with the breather mod to the Arlen Ness, I wanted to make sure that the bottom half was dealt with as well. You can probably tell that I started with the OEM dipstick for this project. It didn't take me but a few parts to put together the solution, but again, it's not working very well. But if you wanted to try it yourself and see if you get any different results, I'll have a list of parts in the video description. The short list of parts that I needed for this project included a 3/16 inch bulkhead hose barb fitting, a lawnmower air filter, a few feet of 3/16 inch fuel line or vacuum line, a 3/16 inch to 3/8 inch barb splice, the little uni breather filter, and of course I needed some ultra black RTV to seal everything up. So I started by separating the two halves of that dipstick. It doesn't really look like they'll separate easily, but with just a small flat bladed screwdriver they pop apart without any problems and there's no damage caused there. And then I drilled holes around the 4 segments of that dipstick at the lowest point so that if oil did end up inside the dipstick, it would drain out through those holes. And then I also cut a little piece of lawnmower air filter to fit inside that dipstick. I tried to cut the edges and make it basically round in shape and cut the contour of it so that it matched the inside shape of that dipstick so that I could push it down in there and have it seal nicely up against the edges without having to be crushed in too much and cause too much restriction and airflow through that element. I also cut a small slot in the top of that filter element just so that when I snap the cap back together, that the backside of that bulkhead fitting would tuck down into that slot and again, not compress that air filter in there. Once I had everything trimmed and I was ready to put it together, I applied a generous bead of ultra black RTV to both halves of that dipstick, lined everything up, snapped it back together, and then cleaned off the excess that squeezed out once I put it back together. And then I let it cure fully for 24 hours just to make sure that there wouldn't be any problems with the seal whatsoever. So let me share with you some of the learnings about this project. It took me a couple of tries to get a basic working dipstick that just didn't leak in general. And what I found out for that is you definitely have to seal that bulkhead fitting against the oil cap itself. I tried it without any sealant, just thinking that that friction fit would have been enough to seal it. I really didn't expect there to be a lot of oil going up into that dipstick. but it's really surprising. There's a lot of oil that goes up in there. The next attempt was to use O-rings to seal that bulkhead fitting. Unfortunately, to get enough tension on those O-rings, they really deformed and got crushed too far to where I didn't trust that they would actually seal. So I threw out that idea, and what I ultimately ended up doing, which I really didn't prefer, but it ended up working, was to use RTV on both sides of that bulkhead fitting so that it would seal on both the outside of the cap and on the inside of the cap. So this is where it starts to get interesting. I thought at this point I had a working solution. I mentioned the couple of attempts that didn't work, and when I tried those first attempts, I'd put the dipstick back on the bike, go for a short ride, and immediately I'd have an oil leak around the cap itself. So I thought once I got those leaks sorted out, that this would be a done deal and I'd have a working solution. But it turns out that wasn't the case at all. So I got to this point where I knew that the previous issues had been addressed with this version of the dipstick. And once I put it on the bike, I didn't bother routing the hose to the permanent location to start with, because I thought, you know what, I've had a lot of failures with this. Let's see what happens before I route this thing in a permanent manner. So I just sort of routed the hose up and under the seat and let that pod filter hang out up there under the seat so I could do a few test rides. So the first few test rides went really well. I didn't notice any oil seepage or any issues like that. I did notice just a little bit of oily residue on the pod filter itself, but I thought, you know, that's not a big deal. I did expect there to be some amount of oil transfer through the hose and end up in the filter. So that didn't really surprise me when I saw that. I thought that was going to be no big deal. So of course, I went through all the trouble of cutting the hose and routing it to its final location, getting everything set up where I wanted it to be, and ended up starting by dropping that pod filter out down to the bottom of the lower swing arm pivot, right beside where the little uni filter comes out that I used on the Arla Nest intake breather solution. Jumped on the bike, ran an errand, and when I got home, I looked over to the side and I saw oil dripping under the bike. And when I looked at the filter, it was pretty saturated with oil at that point. So I immediately had a bit of a concern, but I thought, well, maybe it's just because the filter is down below the level of the top of the dipstick, and so it just needs to be at a higher location. So I relocated the pod filter up high, right beneath the seat, so that it was probably 4 or 5 inches above the dipstick itself. Went for another test ride, got on it a few times, got home, and it had sprayed oil all over the place down the side of the bike. It was a mess. There are no leaks with the dipstick itself. There are no leaks around the bulkhead fitting. There are no leaks around the seam where the two halves of the cap snap together. There's no problems at the hose barb itself. All of the oil leakage at this point is actually blowing up through the dipstick, through that filter, through the hose, and actually coming out the pod filter. I don't know if it's related to the stage 3 kit or not. I know some guys have implemented a solution like this, and from what I have seen, those appear to be working, but I can tell you without hesitation, this is not working on my bike, and I would venture to say that if you have a stage 3 or maybe even a stage 2, or if you just ride the bike hard, you're probably going to blow oil out if you try to implement a solution like this on your bike. So what's the solution for this? Well, a lot of people are using that fueling vented dipstick and it seems to be working well for them, so that seems to be a viable option. But I can tell you that I'm talking to another company that's not fueling that has a different solution to crankcase venting for the Milwaukee 8 Softails. And I'm really excited about the potential of this solution, and actually should have my hands on this in about 2 weeks. So as soon as I get my hands on that product, check it out, install it, and get it tested out, I'll post a video and link to that here so that you can see what that product is all about, how I've gone about solving this issue, and what the initial results have been that I experienced with that product. Drop in a comment and let me know if you've tried a vented dipstick for your bike. Which one did you use and what results did you have? And do you have a stage 3 kit or any other engine modification? I'm really interested to see if other people are having this issue with oil being blown out through that filter like I experienced. If you found this video beneficial or useful, please do hit the thumbs up button and share it with your friends. That really helps the channel out a lot, and I certainly do appreciate it when you do that. And if you're new here, please do consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell and enabling all notifications so you'll be alerted whenever I post new videos. Thanks so much for watching. Enjoy the ride. I'll see you next time.